of you heard during our break portion, one of the things I mentioned was you have the samples in the book. And my intent is not necessarily to kind of hold back or make you reinvent the wheel. I'm going to be sending Darcy kind of a care package. And in that care package, there's going to be a handful of samples for the different things we're talking about here. You're coming up with some good ideas. What I'd like someone to do, and we'll do this the most democratic way possible, is to become the champion of this. So to kind of go back and say, you know what, I have a passion for this. And by the way, if you're not in group number 1, but you'd like to be the pre-job planning person, so be it. In fact, the best way to do this is to solicit feedback from your party, your group here. So part of this process that I'm going to ask you for is we're going to try to get some champions that'll own this and work and continue to Benningize from this point forward. So that's the hard part, to be honest with you, getting one of you to volunteer. So for the respective modules we're talking about. But let's start at the beginning with pre-job planning. So group number 1, why don't you give me one of your ahas? Because I know there's 2 of you, and I don't want you to take all the good ideas. I know Darcy, she'll take all the good ones, and yeah, group number 1 back there gets shafted. So who's your spokesperson?
Darcy.
I'm shocked. I am absolutely shocked. The sad thing is no one else can say Darcy's their spokesperson.
Right. So the big thing that everybody...
All right, guys, everyone give Darcy the floor.
The big thing that everybody at this table that really started to get the chatter going was discussing a buyout at every single level. Estimator, PM, super, and at the stand and deliver. So that was the big one for this.
So like the status, gaps, holes.
They can fill in the details.
No, I want you to. Like, yeah, what you said.
Yeah.
Outstanding. I like that. What about, who was group 1? You guys were group 1 in the middle here?
Yeah, we were group 1.
All right, what was your one aha takeaway for pre-con?
I would say for pre-con would be just the project handoff going over scope gap or overlap.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things, how do you know there's a scope gap if you don't know there's a scope gap? So one of the things that you should almost consider this like an Easter egg hunt. And I know that's kind of a weird thing to do. And it's not to make the estimators feel bad or anything. This is not that intent. I want to be very clear. Estimating is a challenging job, and we don't need to complicate it by poking holes. But let's kind of flush those things out early on and say, what were you thinking when you bid this? Not what were you thinking, it's what were you thinking, you know? Because to be honest with you, sometimes it just gets lost in translation. Well, I thought the electrician had that. Oh, okay, so we can go back and refer to that. But if we don't have that conversation, we make some awful assumptions. So
Yeah, I think it's more so just trying to catch anything.
Gotcha.
More so than what were you thinking here? Just trying to find if there are any.
And there probably is, because as we said before, it's called estimating, not accurating. So, and we said we might change that name. All right, who is group number 2? They're group 2. I did such a good job of mixing you up that I mixed myself up. So group number 2, give me your one aha for short interval and daily home.
We identified that a 2-week look ahead was probably the sweet spot, and one of the items that we would need to go forward to identify the critical path item that where we're at right now.
Yeah, this concept of planning is not done without the CPM schedule and the critical path. We have to have them overlaid. Like we said, schedule and plan are 2 different things. So part of this 2-week plan is to have that. And I almost think taking a different color, if you were to use the an online version or an electronic version, just change the color and say glazing is in red, because that's on the critical path. So our eyes are hyper-focused to what is something that can't slip for whatever reason. Who else was group 2?
Behind me.
Behind you, thank you.
I came in late, so they go first.
We were 3.
Oh, gotcha. So
I didn't get, what was the question
first.
Okay, this is a big one. I also think we found a second volunteer. I'll bust a new job. However, you're a good volunteer. So you did have two teammates though, so.
We didn't understand it.
He wasn't listening. He wasn't listening.
So,
Communication.
yeah. So I'll just ask globally then. You saw that 1 week look ahead. You heard what this group said. I talked about the daily huddle with that big board, as well as that just week look ahead. What kind of things do you think we should think about globally as a group?
Coordinating across all the organizations, which is
All the trades?
all the different trades that we have, yes.
I think that's why I mentioned keeping the board general. I mean, putting goal and safety issues on a board and kind of saying, here's 10 boards for this job site. We are going to mandate that our subs do this sort of huddle. And yes, I know the subs are going to go, I don't need to do a stinking huddle, that's dumb. Guess what? This is how we help them manage better, because if you kind of add that little bit of flavor and push them to do it, it will help them do what they're probably not going to naturally do themselves. So it's kind of like, getting them to go on a diet by feeding them just salads. So, all right, group number 3. What was your aha that you want to share with the group?
I'm gonna let Tom talk.
That was very Germocratic of you. Yes, sir. All right, guys, let's give Tom the floor here.
He said the exit strategy meeting should occur between 50 to 75% complete, depending on the project.
One good idea for this process would be during the pre-job planning meeting, extrapolate it out. So yours is a 3-month job, ballpark. You could kind of go, all right, it's May 1st. I'm making up that you just started May 1st. You can go, all right, well, about 66% we're right in the beginning of, or end of June. Now, if we get to June 30th and we're, nowhere close, that's when we can pull those skids. But I think at least setting the date early, that becomes the bogey. And we even put that on our CPM schedule. Exit strategy meeting, right here. Where should we do the meeting?
We didn't know if this was asking if, when it says who, are you just talking, can we include trades in this, or we thought maybe it was just a vending organization?
Blank canvas, my friend. However, I've had clients do this, and I know you're going to immediately say this is death by meeting, Greg. However, you guys determine the course there. A lot of clients do it where I see an internal meeting, just betting people. Then we have a betting trade closeout meeting, so we bring all the key trades in at the end. Then we have a client closeout meeting. So that way we start at the beginning, let's get our ducks in the row. Last thing I want is an owner sitting in a meeting where we don't look like we have our act together. But let's get the sub square, and then we can meet with the customer and walk through with them and say, this is how we see the world. Tell us what you are planning. If you don't manage the client during closeout, now I know some of your clients like the Publixes of the world probably get closeout, but there are others that they just don't understand it. And they're like, yeah, I got my stuff showing up. What do you need from me? Okay. So this is an opportunity to manage the client as well as manage their expectations. So the answer is whatever you want it to be.
Don't understand how Publix.
What's that?
I said a lot of clients that we're dealing with on a Publix don't understand how Publix closes out because they're a developer and we're working for
Absolutely.
them, and they've brokered a deal with Publix.
They're looking at a pro forma that says $100 a square foot, whatever Publixes there are, and they don't care about any of this other stuff, point of sale equipment, and when the first delivery shows up, it's like, here's my lease agreement. So managing that client very clearly, this is what you got to do. Proactively manage the client and keep them from being their own worst enemy. Group 3 over in front of me. Yes, sir.
One thing stood out, client feedback during the exit strategy meeting.
That's a great one. Here's an opportunity to let them kind of say, how we doing, boss? Ask them how we're doing. I would hate to get to the end and then go, well, man, I had a million things that you guys did wrong. Or you never get that feedback, but I can guarantee you what happens is your competition is into whose ever office. There's probably someone in Lakeland right now going, hey, we can do better than betting. Just tell us, what do you not like about betting? Ah, blah, 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 blah. And they'll tell them. I would much rather get in front of that train and say, tell us how we're doing, boss. What do you like? What do you not like? What can we refine? But here's another little caveat I'm going to tell you. Don't ask for feedback if you're not going to change. Nothing pisses people off more than saying, hey, I wouldn't wear a tan shirt, I would wear a black shirt. And then you come in the next time and you're still wearing a tan shirt, and you go, don't wear a tan shirt. You know, there comes a point where customers get, let's say, jaded. I know Delta, I know they're the obviously loyal sons of Atlanta, but let me tell you, one of the first, I'm a diamond medallion traveler, which just means I'm never home. And after a bad Delta experience, I got one of those surveys. It said, Dear Mr. Schoppman, we know you're a trusted diamond flyer and we value you, so please tell us what we can do better. Okay, so I got my typing fingers on. I'm going to just wax poetic about this and just type this beautiful story. And I went through and I'm like, all right, I feel so much better. I got to vent. About 3 weeks later, I had another delayed flight and another disastrous experience. That Sunday, I get an email from Delta. Dear Mr. Schoppman, as a loyal Delta flyer, we would like to ask you for your feedback. And you know what? Delete. I'm like, you guys don't care, you're not listening, you're not going to change. And I realize I'm just a pebble in the ocean of Delta. But at the same time, don't ask for feedback if you're not going to do anything about it. So I love that. That's a great one, guys. All right, group 4. 4, 4, 4. You're 4? So let's kind of break this up into pieces. What was one of your customer isms that you came up with?
Since we were mostly remodeling this table, we said big thing on Publix is finishing daily work on time and cleaning.
Clean.
Yeah.
That's Darcy knows this, but we just recently built a new house in Pasco County where I live. And you know, all jokes about home builders aside, they have probably, our builder, it's just a serial builder, nothing grandiose, but their system for end of phases is outstanding. And I've watched, because they built my first house years ago, like 15 years ago. They were under a different name at that time. But long story short, when they close out a phase, they go through site grading to kind of get rid of all the garbage, and they don't let people go. However, I can remember the time before they didn't have that process in place. They learned that you got to keep these communities clean. Publix, I mean, this is where my food is. I don't want to see construction, dust, and garbage, and dip cans and whatever. I want this place looking like I can eat off it because that's what it is. And I don't care what other companies do. We care about us. So cleanliness is huge. Who else was group 4? Is it all the way in the back there? What was one of your, we'll call it construction best practices that you identified? Maybe a technique or thing that you learned.
Well, we got several of them. We got enforced ventilation, because they complain about the smell of MMA.
Ooh.
Dust prevention. A lot of the subs will come in and they won't use their vacuum cleaners, and you see this big cloud of dust on the other side of the store. Now we got hours of cleanup to do.
But think if you were a new person coming in and we just assigned you to the Brand X account, the Sprouts account, and you didn't know that. I mean, while it's kind of intuitive that people don't like dust on their food, it might not be as clear to everybody in this room. And how do you keep dust from not popping up? I'll give you a good for instance. There's a tilt contractor in Florida. It was a funny story, actually. They build about 30 tilt jobs a year. And one of the things, if you've ever built tilt wall buildings, and for those of you who aren't familiar, tilt wall poured on the ground, tilted up, hence the name, easy enough. Well, you cast the door frame into the panel itself. So when you raise it up, the door frame's there. That's the easy part. Well, the hard part is when they come and do what's called the pour back strip. If you know anything about tilt, there's a 3-foot strip that it connects the slab itself to the panel as well. So it makes one big envelope. I tell you that because when they pour the pour back strip, the concrete splatters up on the door frame. Well, this was on every one of their punch lists. And I said, guys, how much does that cost you when you have to send a crew back out to this job site to, scrape off the door frame and, metal brushes, Dremel tools, maybe $5,000 and kind of, call it punch list work? I said, so wait a second. You guys do 30 jobs a year, yeah? At $5,000 a pop, yeah. Okay, I'm not a mathematician, but that's like 150 grand a year. Yeah. I said, guys, that's unacceptable. I said, we got to solve, and I didn't get the word solve out of my mouth. I said, we got to solve it. One of their superintendents raised his hand, he goes, I got it, problem solved. I was like, all right, what you got? And he goes, we're going to add $5,000 to every estimate. Drop the mic, and I'm like, hey, have you ever seen, was it Billy Madison, the movie with Adam Sandler? There's a line in the movie, he goes, we are all dumber for having said that. God rest our soul. Well, that's why I just looked at him and said, no, we're not doing that. Well, in the time it told me to tell you this story, some of you were probably going, boy, those concrete guys in Florida are idiots. Why don't you just use blue painter's tape and Visqueen to cover up the door frame and the problem solved? And that's kind of where they landed the plane, was just cover up the door frame, you don't have this problem, end of story. Well, I tell you that because there's probably concrete snot here at Benning. For instance, an item on all y'all's punch list that if I took the last 300 jobs of Benning and laid them all out, all the punch lists side by side, there would be an item that would be on every single one of them. I don't know what it is, but I will call it concrete snot. And the reason I say that is because how often have we said, it's just the way it is, or put more money in it, estimator, that'll solve the problem. When in reality, the solution was the blue painter's tape and Visqueen. And I'm not saying everything is solvable, but we've got to step away from the problem and kind of look at it deeper than that. And use these best practices, customerisms, to help create this. So, now that we've got some great ideas, and I heard a lot of other discussions as we went forward, I need some champions. So, the idea of the champions is going to be to take I hope I'm right with the dry erase. Okay. So, it's to take these things that we've talked about and institutionalize them. This doesn't mean you work by yourself. It means you should work well with your friends in the sandbox here. But what I want you to do is be the tip of the spear. Be the start of this. So, who would like to be the pre-job planning czar? Don't all jump up at once. Oh my gosh, I'm holding you back here. Yeah. Anybody? Bueller?
I thought Todd said he wanted to do that.
What about pre-job?
You have
Which one would you like to do?
All
How
right,
about
which
that?
one do you want? That's what you get for taking that cookie.
Todd, what would you like?
I'll work with you.
All
I
right.
work on the short interval planning.
Okay. All right. Then who would like to be
Glad
pre-job?
voluntold.
What's that?
Glad to be voluntold.
Thank you. It's a democratic process. I call it a benevolent dictatorship.
Joey's another estimator. He's probably the one that came up with that pre over there.
No.
I think it would be good for you since you're young and you have you can come fresh. And
Nick's young.
you can
Yeah,
represent the
fresh.
millennials. Let's do it.
However, this is
And that's no K. He doesn't, his
Oh,
really, his
my bad.
really don't like a K.
Yeah, he's a millennial. It's just
Says the other
nice.
Nick.
So there's no mistake.
and actually the I is actually like an apostrophe now.
Yeah.
Will you feel free to, and keep in mind, being
Can I
a
bring
champ-
in? Can I phone a friend?
Yes, you can phone
Yes,
many
this is-
friends.
Most definitely phone many friends. This is not do it on nights and weekends by yourself in a closet. This is get a group, buy them lunch. Hell, I'll buy you lunch for them. But you got to get a group together to kind of massage the things that I'm going to send Darcy. So
Oh, this is for later. Okay.
yeah, you're not doing this today. I mean, this is like
This is long term.
Yeah, it's long term. I want us to
Darcy's in
leave.
my group.
Yep, I'm gonna help
Well,
everybody.
Darcy's gonna be the one who gets all this and then kind of disseminate it, so.
Yep,
So we can get,
Say again?
Lane is our boss, he's
Yeah.
he's vice president of estimating,
Yeah.
so we would need his input.
Absolutely. Don't do this in a vacuum, that's the key here. Don't do it just all estimating, I'd reach across the aisle. So, what about exit strategy? Thank you. What was your name again, sir? Anthony. I'm probably gonna spell it wrong, but am I close?
that's why I call him Andy. It's easier to spell.
Except it's Andy with an I. Post-job review and the lessons learned library. Thank you. What was your name, sir?
Brad?
Brad? Thank you, Brad. I wanted to get some additional support. And that's how you spell Brad, right? Okay, sure. It's with an E-I.
With an F.
Yeah, with an F. And the PH is silent. So here's for the groups, for the champions, as I said, you're just the quarterback. You need an entire team. Go out, ask people, work with Darcy.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
So now the exit strategy and the post-job review are two different items?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this was my drawing. I think you had stepped out, Darcy, before
Okay.
lunch. Exit is getting to the finish line. Post-job review, lessons learned library is
Okay.
after the finish line.
I gotcha.
So I'll send these attachments.
Finish line and all kinds.
Yeah. When you get these samples, first and foremost, do not feel like you have to use them. And just like you've seen here, these are just samples. You have to put the Benning fingerprint on the murder weapon. So if you go, wait, what Gregg sent us is crap, and you come up with your own, outstanding. I just hate for you guys to have to reinvent the wheel and do things that I've probably done 100 times. But at the end of the day, you're going to be responsible for kind of getting together. One of the things we'll do when we're together again, which will be coming up, not that you have to be done by then, but I'm going to give you some time in a stand and deliver format to kind of just say, hey, this is where I'm at right now. And you might say, I'm 25% down the way. I need some input from you, and you. Great. But the more you can kind of push out and get feedback, the better, because that's how people will be bought in. Make sense? I appreciate you four guys taking on this responsibility. To be honest with you, it's not easy. It's this all over again, but that's why by doing it, asking those questions, you'll get more of a response. Which now brings us to the fun part of the day. So,
You did a good job.
we ain't done yet. Wow! I never got an ovation before we're done.
Fun part of the day, yay, we're done.
On that note, so,
Flags, we're out of here.
we're almost done. How about that?
That was wrong.
That being said, there's a couple things. You'll notice I drew this pie chart up here. We actually did this study many years ago, but we continue to do it with the CURT, which is the Construction Users Roundtable, the CII, the Construction Institute, or something like that. Long story short, what it does is it looks at what people do on job sites. So we would send our people out to go look at job sites and see how people spend their day. They can spend it in one of three ways: primary time, secondary time, and recoverable lost time. Primary time is spent doing the work, time actually spent doing productive activities. Secondary time is spent doing planning for the work. Recoverable lost time is time spent doing anything but the first two. So could be rework, could be wasted time. It's simply put, not productive. Now, the percentages I have up there, and I believe that adds up to 100%, as you see it, one of the things you will notice, it actually is wrong. Yeah, it's 23. Sorry, my bad.
That's the engineer in him.
Yeah, it's factors here. So the idea is that on any construction site, you will find that about 43% of the day is spent actually doing work. But the interesting thing is that 34%. What's 34% of an 8-hour day?
3 hours.
It's about 2.5, 3 hours, somewhere in that time frame. So think about that. 2.5 hours is spent in recoverable lost time. That's a lot of time, folks. Now, I know some of you are probably going, no way, not possible. Well, we're going to test that theory in just a moment. So, all that being said, I need 4 volunteers. I know we have 1 because you have a heartbeat and you're breathing, so that's good. So, are you a super?
Super.
Okay. I would like an estimator.
You got out of the last one, Joey, so you get on this
All right,
one.
Joey. So, Joey, you will be one of our volunteers. Is there a PM in the room?
No.
Nick Donnie.
Nick, you are going to be volunteer number 3. And numero 4. Anybody else? All right, there you go. Yeah, that's right. You were my 4th one anyway. You guys, if you'll stand up for a moment, you get a break.